Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your day and a great week out there so far as we're cruising on through it. Got you some updated information on what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. The big topic today would be just a large area of the country running at least a risk of thunderstorms. There's certain areas that do run a more heightened risk of strong to severe storms, and we'll speak on those areas more specifically and more detailed, if you will. And then with the risk of summer type thunderstorms, there's going to be a risk of flash flooding. In fact, there's flash flood warnings ongoing in portions of Texas right now. So of course we'll speak on that. But then we'll cover the rest of the country, talk about how the heat wave is on. So in the Southwest and, like southern sections of Texas, it's very hot, very humid, especially once you get into southern sections of Texas. Of course, it's a dry heat in the Southwest. We'll speak on how hot it could potentially get today in the southwestern states, and then we'll break down, everybody else also. After we get done doing that, we will talk about what's to come as far as severe weather risk, but I'll tell you, there's nothing significant really coming up, but we will give you the latest from the Storm Prediction Center for the days upcoming between now and basically the next 3 days. And then we'll give you an update on the tropics. I think I'm just going to start doing this daily. We got a good routine with it going, unless there's just absolutely nothing going on out there, which there really isn't right now. But I am watching an area. As the GFS is just really liking this area, but the GFS tends to have a bias towards developing tropical systems in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. But we're going to compare some model guidance, talk about just a large area of moisture that could really get going and eventually surge north. And I do think that'll have an opportunity to deliver a lot of rain in Florida. In some cases, much needed rain, but it might be too much rain in a too short amount of time. So we are going to speak on that, and I don't think that'll happen this week. If that happens, it'll happen next week. But, if you live in Florida or even in the Southeast, definitely stay tuned for the second half of the video. We'll speak a little bit on that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling. So the western U.S. pretty quiet. The flow's pretty much shut off out here. Not a lot of moisture. The ridge is flexing pretty far north in the western U.S. So this morning you don't have a lot going on besides a little bit of shower activity in the extreme northern states of the Rockies. But you do have this huge complex of rain, showers, and storms that is certainly weakening now. No severe thunderstorm warnings are up, but we do have numerous flash flood warnings up in areas of northeast and northern Texas. That does include the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so be aware of this. A little bit of a spin ongoing in western Arkansas, but the leftover rain is surging basically down the Louisiana-Texas state line right now. So be aware of this with your morning commute in this area of the country. A little bit of rain dancing around the deep south, and we have more, I would say, put together showers and storms across eastern Missouri, areas of Illinois, and then a lot more widespread activity once you get into the Great Lakes and the upper Midwest area. We just got some scattered downpours and isolated downpours around the eastern U.S. with a little bit of flow up here. Surging through the Dakotas, a little bit of some chilly rainfall. I think temperatures are only in the 50s and 60s up here, so some shower activity ongoing up there, but that's what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, advisories. You got a lot of wind advisories across the Dakotas, just about every county. Northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, wind advisories, flood watches up in northern Wisconsin, also in the Texarkana area. Northern Louisiana, southwestern Arkansas, northeastern Texas, and areas of southeastern Oklahoma. It seems like I've mentioned that area many times over the last several days. Flood watch is continuing with some flash flood warnings ongoing right now too. Heat advisories in the orange, excessive heat warnings in this purple shaded color, excessive heat warnings in this purple, same purple. And this is just because you got the big time heat wave that's really going to crank up today. It really started yesterday, but today temperatures will really surge well into the 100s. And a lot of these areas that are favored to surge into 100s, like that valley in California, of course, the desert Southwest, Death Valley, even Las Vegas, very hot conditions. Heat advisories in the orange, high wind warnings in this mustard color in Montana, Wyoming, one county in South Dakota. And then the eastern U.S., we do have some flood watches up for the D.C. area, ahead of a very, I would say, moist air mass, multiple rounds of showers and storms expected in the mid-Atlantic today. So that's watches, warnings, and advisories. Excessive rainfall outlook. It does highlight this area of the mid-Atlantic And then areas of the Central Apps too, like West Virginia, Southern PA, Western Maryland, all of Maryland just about. Areas of southeastern Ohio too. There's a slight risk, which means there's at least a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in any given location. Eastern Texas also has a little area you got to watch, and this area's already seen a lot of rain. And a pretty large area of the eastern and southern U.S. has a marginal risk. So, I got about an inch of rain at my house yesterday from a storm that lasted about 30 minutes. So, you never know when a storm is just going to dump a lot of rain on you, especially once you get in a summer-type pattern. We're well into June now, and that's typical stuff. This kind of tripped me out when I brought this up this morning preparing this video. Large area in the light green, just a general risk of thunderstorms, right? But you got 5 different areas that run a marginal risk. One up here, one here in the DC-Baltimore area, northern VA, one across the Ohio Valley all the way pretty much into southern Canada, even though y'all's severe risk outlooks are a little bit different up here in Canada. Level 1 out of 5 risk here. Across areas of the upper Midwest, and then down here in the South once again. So what is this driven off of? Well, there is a 2% risk of a tornado. Higher populated region, Baltimore, D.C. area. And then same thing with Ohio, areas of West Virginia, Western PA, Eastern Indiana. 2% risk of a tornado, and then the rest, just 5% risk of damaging winds, hail, 5% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So let's break down the Southeast first. I do want to mention it's going to be hard to zoom in on every single area, guys. I'm going to miss some states. I had somebody in the comments yesterday say I never mentioned Eastern Tennessee. I know I don't say stuff like that, guys, but that tripped me out. I honestly was a little offended. I was like, man, I mentioned Tennessee a good bit. If there's definitely a state in the Southeast that I mentioned, I definitely say the word Tennessee a lot. So just note that, I guess visibly, as you as the audience, definitely know where you are on the map, because I don't actually say out loud your specific area, and I know some people just put on their earplugs probably and just listen to me talk, so they're not seeing what I'm displaying here. But it is important to, and it's not a knock on anybody, I'm really not trying to be ugly about it or sarcastic, but it is important to kind of know where you are. And if you see just orange, green, yellow over your area, like for example in Eastern Tennessee, just think in your head, okay, we run the risk of some thunderstorms today based off this run of the model. Now, I know not everybody thinks like that, but I do want to mention that for you folks. I try to do my best, but guys, I'm not going to be able to mention northern Alabama, southern Alabama, northern Florida, central Georgia, central VA. I just can't do all that. So anyways, that's a minute of, just complaining there. So let's keep it rolling. So the models are doing pretty well with all this storm action in eastern Texas. You start to get to about midday. One thing I'll note here, a lot of shower and storm activity across the southern apps, especially west of the Appalachian Mountains, like in eastern Tennessee, central and eastern Kentucky. You got pop-ups down here in Georgia. You got thunderstorms still lingering down here in southern Louisiana. And then you keep these going, and you're getting widespread activity here across southeast Georgia, especially some storms dancing around down here in southern Florida, isolated to scattered downpours across South Carolina, even in North Carolina, even though it doesn't show it as much. And just note that models struggle with these kind of patterns, really light flow. That's why these little downpours can drop so much rain in such a little bit of, it seems like such a little bit of time. These storms pop up, they don't really move much, moving at 5 to 10 miles per hour, and just drop a huge amount of rain. When you can go up the street to your friend's house, and they're like, dude, you didn't get any rain? It just rained like an inch of rain at my house. That's how it is in the summer in the South. It's really anywhere. It's not just the South. But look at these storms dancing around. These could be strong to severe in Florida. And you keep these going, and could have a more organized complex of storms later tonight here in the deep South that cruises across Mississippi, northern Alabama, central Alabama. And then eventually we're waking up tomorrow morning with just some scattered downpours around. But a little bit closer look at an area that I do think will have a more heightened risk of thunderstorms, maybe not necessarily severe, could be, is right in here. This is around 1 to 2 p.m. Look at all these thunderstorms across central Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, pop-ups into Georgia, western South Carolina, even across the mountains. I think it'll be a stormy day in the mountains if you're vacationing or whatever you're doing, or just or you're just living the mountains here. A lot of thunderstorms rumbling through the area, West Virginia, Western Virginia, and you continue to see this, and look at these thunderstorms down South Carolina. All of this red and yellow and orange could very well be up here in the northern sections of South Carolina. Very hard. Just know that basically everybody I'm showing right here on the map runs a risk of thunderstorms a day. It's kind of one of those days, I think I've mentioned this before, where you kind of look at your Weather Channel app or your weather app and it says there's anywhere from a 20 to 40% chance of rain. And I think, that's pretty much a good call. I'm not a big fan of weather apps, but I think that that's pretty much spot on. And here it is, the National Weather Service as far as how much rain could fall. And like I said, it favors this area along the Appalachian Mountains, points west. Some areas could get an inch and a half of rain from this setup. It just depends on if your area gets hit by a storm that has a little bit more longevity to it and just lasts a little bit longer, or if you just get hit by multiple rounds of storms. The Northeast today, two big areas, really three areas to watch. One's down here in the Mid-Atlantic. See the thunderstorms? I mean, they're everywhere, guys. You got to watch these storms in the Ohio Valley form. We'll zoom into the Ohio Valley here in the north central time frame. So if you live in Ohio, I will get a little bit closer for you folks in the north central frame. I know you're not in the north central. Ohio's kind of like Louisiana for the South with my videos. You never know if I'm really going to zoom into your area in the northeast frame or in the north central U.S. Same thing with Louisiana. Never know if it's going to be the southeast or south central. So it's kind of like the meeting point between both the regions that I mentioned. But you get into this afternoon, you see these thunderstorms developing here in the down east areas of Maine, down to southern Maine, the coastal areas of the Maine. I mean, even in central sections of the state, strong to severe storms are possible. A real summer-like pattern here. And you just got all these thunderstorms in this region in central PA, western New York. I think the really one area that might kind of remain stormless is maybe you, like Robin, in the interior northeast, loyal viewer up here. You might not get much throughout the day. Now, once we get into the night, the storms could really get going. But you see all these thunderstorms cruising through Ohio. This is like 8 to 9 p.m. storms and just downpours across West Virginia, right outside of Pittsburgh. Got some thunderstorms in the Delmarva region. They're just everywhere, guys. And then we're waking up tomorrow morning, and we're probably waking up to a pretty rainy start. In Long Island, could be stormy. Southern New England, and just scattered downpours across PA and western New York for sure. A little bit closer look to more of a favored region of thunderstorms. Here they are cruising through the region. If you're confused about the time frame, most of this is in Eastern time, if not all of it. 5 p.m. Thunderstorms just making their way through PA. The Mid-Atlantic, D.C., look at these storms. Baltimore, Philadelphia experiencing some storms. Delaware. Here comes another round that hits D.C. It looks like around 8 or 9, 10 p.m. And then we have a more organized area of storms that begin to rumble through Erie, maybe getting all the way down to Pittsburgh, after midnight tonight. And we continue just to get rounds of storms. And, this area, certain areas are probably going to get an inch, 2 inches of rain. It's really liking the idea of maybe around an inch of rain from D.C. to Baltimore. A little bit less once you get closer to New York City, but still, in this area right in here, good bit of rain. South Central U.S., I think it'll be a quieter day today. We got to watch the lingering outflow of these storms that continue to cruise maybe into like western Louisiana, and they definitely are going to cruise through eastern Texas throughout the morning hours. They could re-intensify right before this energy kind of gets off the coastline of Texas. But I think Houston, maybe as far south as Corpus Christi, could get some thunderstorms later on this afternoon into this evening. Just standard pop-ups in this region. Could get a more organized area of storms that you see right here with just lingering outflow boundaries here in Mississippi. Watch out if you live from Jackson, the Meridian points south, and especially points north. You guys definitely could get some strong to severe storms later on this evening. But, it looks like for the most part, no widespread, more mesoscale convective systems, kind of lines of storms developing in this area. I think that the weather is much more chill in general across the south central U.S. today. Hotter than Hades down here in southern Texas. But I think you'll be begging for some storms in southern Texas today. The north central U.S. You got the energy out there this morning. I think throughout the morning hours, let's see what's going on right now. Yeah, so, Stephen up here in the UP, you guys are, starting to get a lot of rain. I think the eastern UP right at this moment, not getting much right now, but that'll change throughout the morning hours. And by the time we get to about midday, we got a line of thunderstorms surging through all the way up here into Canada, north of Lake Superior, rumbling through the eastern UP, storms rumbling through the lower Michigan. Might even get a line of storms that hits like Green Bay, maybe down to Milwaukee around midday today. Might not. Most of the energy will be in the lower Michigan. Okay, look at these storms trying to get going down here in the Midwest, the Ohio Valley. I'm going to zoom into this area. So it's really these areas right in here and then this area right here to watch out for up here. See these thunderstorms popping up in eastern Minnesota. I mean, could pop up right on top of Minneapolis, then drifts into western, northern Wisconsin, all the way down into Iowa. These will hit severe limits today. Some of them will. And so, the UP and Michigan, another round of thunderstorms today, and then weakens very quickly. But a little bit closer look at my friends down here in Indiana. I mean, I'm even showing Kentucky, Illinois, and Ohio. The energy will really get going. I mean, this is around lunchtime. Could get some thunderstorms. Indianapolis points north really around midday. Storms rumbling through. It's the southern half. Really all of lower Michigan, but I only got the southern half of lower Michigan here. If you live here, Lansing, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, eventually all the way into Detroit later on in the afternoon, you guys will see the storms. You see in Kentucky, you see the thunderstorms rumbling through here. Pop-ups could have a little bit of a tornado risk. You might get a couple tornado warnings out of this. More organized line of storms that eventually hits Indianapolis after the first round might miss this afternoon. Another round develops, hits the city potentially, gets all the way down to Evansville, southern Illinois, southern Ohio, drifts all the way down to Louisville, Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus get some thunderstorms this evening, Detroit, Cleveland also, and then they kind of head off into the eastern U.S. So be aware of this. If you look at the updraft velocity swath from this, it does show some rotation with some of these storms, more heightened area, kind of northeast of Indianapolis right into here. But it does show, some stronger updrafts from rotating updrafts with this. So just be aware of that. And then a little bit further up to the northwest, first round of storms will move through. We already talked about this. I mean, look at all these this opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised the marginal risk is extended a little bit further north into lower Michigan. But you got to watch these rounds of strong to severe storms that kind of make their way through into the upper Midwest. Multi-clusters. Got a cluster down here, cluster right here, one up here in the western UP, northeastern Minnesota. This is around 5 to 6 p.m. Just got rounds of storms. Some of them that will hit that strong to severe limit. And, definitely a stormy evening for the UP and Michigan, for Wisconsin. And then this energy will try to make it all the way into lower Michigan. Will eventually just kind of weaken, and I do think it'll just be more so some rain rather than storms. But certainly be aware of that. Definitely some gusty winds. Couldn't rule out a tornado risk. Some hail with this. It's definitely possible. The western U.S., it's quiet, guys. I mean, it really is. There's nothing really to talk about out here. The ridge is dominating your pattern, which means you typically have more stable, hot conditions. You have sinking air. You need rising air for thunderstorm development. Sinking air with the ridge. And man, it's just quiet. This takes us all the way through tomorrow morning. Really the only thing that could impact your life weather-wise would be the heat in the southwest. The Valley of California, well into the hundreds, the low 100s. Somebody will probably hit 105, maybe more. Very hot in the desert southwest. Las Vegas will get very hot today. Phoenix, hot. So very hot conditions. The ridge is flexing in this region, and tomorrow will be even hotter. Okay, the valley starts to get close to certain areas 110. So then it might drop a little bit as we start to get closer to the weekend. So temperatures in the eastern U.S., look how warm it is up here in Canada. I mean, nice in Nova Scotia, especially western Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Nice warm weather across the northeast. 70s and 80s. Somebody might get into the mid-80s. Eastern U.S., where it's not raining, it'll get well into the 80s. Very humid. Florida will be brutally hot today, well into the mid to upper 90s. It's been a very hot start to summer so far. And then, you'll have pockets of cooler air. For example, leftover cloud cover from these storms that kind of make their way through eastern Areas of Texas might keep your temperatures a little bit cooler today, but it'll be extremely humid for sure, no doubt. Basically, the entire country, I mean, there's really no cool air to be found unless you get all the way here up here into the northern counties of North Dakota. It's pretty warm across the board. Ridge out west, zonal flow pretty much everywhere else. I mean, it's nice and warm. So, Storm Prediction Center outlook for tomorrow. The general risk of thunderstorms for the eastern U.S. again, a little bit more of a heightened risk of strong to severe storms across the Space Coast of Florida, Orlando all the way down to Miami, Melbourne, Fort Lauderdale, you guys, level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather. So we'll watch for this. We'll talk about that tomorrow morning. And then we make our way into Friday. A risk of severe storms introduces itself across the central high plains. So we'll try to figure that one out. But right now, they're not thinking that's going to be a huge deal by any means. And then the update from the National Hurricane Center. As of right now, let's make sure nothing's changed. No tropical cyclone activity is expected during the next 7 days. So nothing to speak on as far as anything highlighted. The latest GFS, and if you've been tuning in over the last few videos, we've been kind of giving you an update on the tropics and been watching the Caribbean, something called a CAG, a Central American gyrum. And it's basically a huge area of rotation, basically. It's a broad area of low pressure that kind of spins around across Central America at this time of the year and just delivers real tropical downpours. And sometimes a more organized area of energy can drift from one side to the other of Central America and then consolidate into a vort and then basically develop into some sort of tropical system. So that's what we're watching with this. The GFS still likes the idea of that, but one thing the GFS is doing is what it loves to do, which it really likes to back up a threat, a potential threat. It does the same thing in the winter. It'll show a winter storm at a certain time frame or a pattern change to a colder pattern, and it likes to delay it. And typically in the weather world, when models delay something like the GFS, delayed means denied. That's something that I've learned over time, and I just want to mention that before I show you this run of the GFS. So we're going to start this off Sunday morning, June 9th. You notice there's a lot of moisture hanging out down here in the Caribbean. This is the Western Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, southwestern areas of the Atlantic. Okay. We keep this going. Huge area low pressure. I'll say a broad area low pressure should be what I say. This could be delivering a lot of rainy times to Jamaica. And then watch how, this energy tries to creep a little bit further north. At this time, we're literally about a week from today. There's already a lot of moisture diving down into the southeastern U.S. This could be a big weather maker for the southeastern U.S. And one thing I haven't really mentioned a lot, and I should have mentioned already, is a big trough that's going to dive into the eastern U.S. and actually bring some nice conditions, maybe for the weekend for certain areas, cool people down. But watch as the GFS a week out from today doesn't have that low pressure anymore. You back this up a couple runs, for example. You back it up to one run ago, and it had a pretty well put together low pressure. It looks like 1,001 millibar low pressure. A couple runs before that, you had already a low pressure developing, and a run before that, you already had one hitting South Florida and heading on out to the Atlantic. So you can tell it's delaying the development of this, but eventually it does get this together, literally by June 14th, mid-month, and develops this into a tropical system, and eventually does make landfall in Louisiana. That's what 270 hours out. So that's it's like 2 weekends from now, right? So it technically has a landfall in Tropical Storm Alberto. But I want you to know is that the GFS is delaying the heck out of this. And typically that means it's going to fold like an omelet eventually. So you compare this to the European model, right? Which sometimes can be too conservative. And we get into Monday morning. I want you to notice that bowl again. We talked about this, kind of reintroduced this. You see how this is kind of like bowled out. Not a whole lot going on here, and there's a lot of rain along this line I drew. That is actually your upper trough diving down this weekend into early next week. Okay, that could probably be some sort of steering factor as basically the directional flow around low pressure moves like this. And we'll talk about this when we have something that's looking when we just get a little bit closer. But anyways, GFS does have some moisture down here, southern, sort of right where the Caribbean meets the Gulf of Mexico. Pulls it up and actually does develop some sort of low, but it doesn't pop up on your screen until it's over land. So to me, what this looks like is you got some sort of cold front into here. You got tropical moisture right into here. The cold front is probably going to try to push whatever this is this way. And eventually, this moves like this. As the cold front sort of stalls, because we're just not the time of the year where these cold fronts come in and then clear the entire eastern U.S. So there's going to be dry air up here. It's going to mess with this anyways. And if we keep kind of put this back in motion here, watch how, no moisture over here, a lot of moisture over Florida, areas of Georgia, the Carolinas, and then this heads on off. So to me, that looks like a pattern that's going to really hit Florida. I think that if you combine the GFS and the Euro, one thing that you can agree on, if they got together and had a conversation, I think one thing they would agree on is that you're going to have a lot of moisture that gets pulled north out the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean sometime next week. And sure enough, if you look at the European ensemble, this is between now Sunday evening. Not a lot of rain across Florida, but look at all this rain across Cuba, down Jamaica, the Yucatan Peninsula, and watch how, and this is the European ensemble, so it takes, many runs, like in this case, 51 runs, and then combines them all together and creates a mean. So for this specific time frame, all right, so we get about a week out. Notice you're starting to get a lot more rain. And then we go about 10 days out. Okay, this takes us all the way to about next Friday evening. Look how much rain is showing. And this could be underdone because it's just an ensemble mean. Look how much rain is showing for the peninsula of Florida. This could be some much needed rain. Of course, we don't want it all at one time. But I guess if I'm in Florida or anywhere in the southeast, or really the deep south, I would watch this more so for a big-time rainmaker. I don't think you're going to have a Hurricane Alberto in the Gulf of Mexico next week. I really don't. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're not going to have a tropical storm. We've seen weirder things happen in the Gulf of Mexico and off the coast of the southeast. So I do think we have much needed rain on the way for Florida. So if you're tuning in, you're from Florida, I would watch next week for a lot of tropical moisture and potentially a little bit further north into the southeast. That's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you again tomorrow morning.